Welcome back to Awakened Exchanges. I'm your host, Jay Rich, and I want to thank you all so much for joining us here today. Happy Thanksgiving week, my podcast friends. I'm coming back after a much shorter break than the last round, but I'm still trying to bring you fairly regular content at this point. Sadly, things are still a bit tight, and that includes my time to make these. So I will continue to do my best to bring you updates and special guests as I can. It means a lot to see that you're still listening and sharing this podcast with your friends and others. I just want to thank those that are just joining us, and I want to warmly welcome you to the exchange. I truly value the new thoughts and energy which help this podcast and community thrive. You listeners truly keep things flowing, as you are the most important part of this podcast for me. Please remember that if you have any suggestions for topics or guests, I do listen to the listeners, and I look forward to your email, either from our website or you can contact me on Twitter at Awaken Exchanges. I hope you're as excited to be here as I am to be back with you. You may have noticed this isn't releasing on Tuesday this week, and that's because I've decided that since I'm not able to maintain a weekly schedule like I was doing before, I'm just going to release content as I can and hope to someday have the time and financial viability to once again release weekly episodes. Until then, I hope that you keep listening and enjoy joining in on the exchange as we go. It's also a nice bonus that today is Thanksgiving, which gives me a good excuse to show some gratitude at the end of the year. We're going to discuss cryptocurrency, the booming Metaverse, as well as touching on COVID and the future plans of this podcast, as well as the germinating A.R.C community. I hope that you enjoy this very personal and thankful Thanksgiving episode. But before I get into it, I want to thank a sharp-eared listener, whom I'll just call by his first name, Paul. Paul noticed that in Agent of Chaos Part 2, I had mentioned that Tom O'Neill had found proof of contact between Dr. David Smith and Sidney Gottlieb, the head of the CIA's MK Ultra program. While the connections are actually a little bit more tenuous than that, the connections actually go through Jolly West, which he reminded me the letters that Tom O'Neill found were actually between Sidney Gottlieb's alter ego and Dr. Lewis Jolly West. Good catch, Paul. I want to thank you again. You're very appreciated. In fact, you might say I'm thankful for you this holiday season. Now, with that correction taken care of, and since this week is just going to be another solo episode, I'm just going to get to the brief rundown of our sponsors. First off, I want to thank all of you personally for your support. Just listening to this podcast and sharing it with your friends gives me a reason to keep providing the best content that I can. If you have the means and would like to contribute personally, please take a look at our Patreon page, where you will get access to exclusive content and deals. As for our other sponsors, Awakened Vapes was the first of the Awakened brands and has been helping you modulate your high with CBD-only, high-terpene vape products since 2019. Genesis Pharms has been making the highest quality medicinal RSO among many other fantastic products, starting with the medical community back before 2010. And last but not least, the Caramel Corn Company, bringing you caramel corn the way it was meant to be. And remember, if you enjoy this podcast, please follow us on Spotify, subscribe to us on YouTube, or follow us wherever else you're listening. And if you can, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I know every podcast says it, but that's because it really does help spread the word. You can also support us on Patreon or connect with us on the social media of your choice. We are at Awakened Exchanges on Facebook and Instagram, and at Awaken Exchanges on Twitter. All right, now, stay tuned, and thank you for listening to Awakened Exchanges. Genesis Pharms was founded on the belief in cannabis's ability to heal. Genesis Pharms is more than a brand. They're a compassionate community of like-minded individuals that generate top-quality cannabis products made with love and care. Community outreach is always on their mind, and their partnerships with Grow for Vets and Parents for Pot was just a beginning to what they hope to accomplish in the coming years. You can find their products on the best dispensary shelves across the state of Oregon. Their RSO is the most consistent quality in the state. Their tinctures are second to none, and their personal massage oil will have you and your partner both coming back for more. Find them on Facebook and Instagram and ask for them in your local dispensary today. Don't forget to listen to Sean's interview here on Awakened Exchanges. It's episode number 3. The Caramel Corn Company is bringing you caramel corn the way it was meant to be. Made with premium ingredients in small, handcrafted batches and completely gluten-free. The flavors include original, roasted cashew, salted almond, mixed nut, spicy sriracha, white morsel macadamia, peanut butter, butterscotch, and my personal favorites, chocolate drizzle and raspberry caramel apple. I can't say enough about how delicious this caramel corn is. It makes a great gift any time of the year. You can find them on sale in Portland area Market of Choice locations and online again here real soon. Visit caramelcorncompany.com for more information today. Remember, buying local supports small businesses and keeps your money building your community. And last but not least, Awakened Vapes has been bringing you some of the highest quality CBD vape cartridges since ringing in the new year in 2019. I became passionate about cannabis after a car wreck left me with major migraines, and no prescribed pills helped alleviate any of the symptoms. Having only tried cannabis a handful of times in high school and college, it was a doctor's recommendation that led me to give cannabis another try. Only then did I realize that we'd all been at least a little misled about the health benefits of this amazing plant. Despite the unexpected break because of the vape ban and then a global health crisis, the business is stronger than ever, and we invite you to check out our updated website today. We are still offering our 3 varieties with new improved terpene formulations and enhanced flavor to go along with the custom blended terpene effect profiles. Check back at awakenedvapes.com for any updates. You can always email us about wholesaling or white labeling opportunities as well. Welcome back to Awakened Exchanges. We've been dark for a couple of weeks this time, but we're still here. I wish I had the time, money, and energy to keep these coming out each week, but until that day comes, I hope you still enjoy the exchanges as they come to you. I also want all of our listeners to know that I'm incredibly thankful for each and every one of you, year-round, not just today as we get into this thankful holiday season. For those of you that have been listening since the beginning, you know that I started this podcast with Sober October last year in 2020, and that my goal was to do a mostly sober October this year. I have to hold myself accountable, however, as I was not as successful as I would have liked. I was able to abstain from most things, having a total of maybe 3 drinks all month, and only with friends, as we tried to celebrate what little time outside of the house we were going to get before COVID and winter locked us all back down. After a couple of hard weeks, my nightly couple of dabs no longer did the trick either, unfortunately. So I needed to use a bit more to combat the depressive side of things. It's interesting that that seemed to coincide with me stopping my microdose regimen as well. I've thought about starting it up again, but I think I've got to figure out a few more steps first, now that things are so much up in the air personally. As I've said before, I've always tried to be vulnerable and open on this podcast. These last few months have definitely been more rough than I'd hoped. And if you've listened recently, then you know that I'm not only trying to still write and make content here while keeping Awakened Vapes running, but I'm smack dab in the middle of the great American job hunt that's going on right now. I'm surprised, actually, at how fierce the competition is, not just for cannabis industry jobs, but for pretty much anything over $15 an hour. And we all know that that's not even a real living wage, right? Not if you're having to pay everything yourself or live in a city in America. I'm sure it'd be fine in many places, but it certainly is not fine in a city like Portland, let alone New York or Los Angeles. Expenses are quickly outpacing income, and with inflation sending prices skyrocketing, even if you could have afforded to live on $15 an hour somewhere in our country, I don't know that that's going to happen for that much longer, especially if you're trying to support a family, which I'm very grateful I don't have to do at this point because I don't think I could. When you add to it my own personal issues, such as having a felony conviction, which you already know I do if you listen to the intro episode of this podcast, then you get a whole lot of closed doors in your face in the process. Right now, I'm still getting by, but the thought of selling my house has definitely become a lot more prominent in the last month or so. We'll see how 2022 treats it. As for getting by, I think this is probably the best place for me to start talking about this mass financial awakening that is starting to take place with millennials out there. First off, I want to warn all of you that a reversal is still likely to come. So think long-term and remember to stay strong when others are weak. Opportunities to buy are likely to come when others are selling, and vice versa. That said, this is not financial advice. I want to repeat that again, just in case that wasn't loud enough for you guys. This is not financial advice. It is just my research and musings about what has started to happen and what is to come. Take it as you will, but they are my honest thoughts coming from the research I've been doing over the last months and years. I would love to talk about stocks and get deep into some of this stuff with an expert on the show someday, but I know a lot of people, it's just going to go straight over their heads, or it's just something they don't even want to deal with. So I'm going to skip stocks and talk a little bit more about the future. So why did I call it a financial awakening? Well, it's because since the pandemic, it looks like all of the millennials that have been laid off or dealing with the massive job inequalities have had time to learn enough about investing to be a little dangerous, not just to themselves, but to the financial sector as a whole. Everybody heard of Reddit and Ape Strong this year with their GameStop strategy, didn't you? Well, some of my generation are starting to come into a little bit of financial power and knowledge and have started spreading that news via podcasts and YouTube videos. I wonder what that sounds like. Anyway, they're turning a whole generation of people to the potential of taking their future at least a little more into their own hands. We all know that the generation ahead of us is staying in their jobs longer, not promoting us sooner, and basically hamstringing this millennial generation. We're the first generation who are not going to end up doing better than our parents did. And it's just going to keep getting worse from here unless things change. Now, we could get into the stock market, and like I said, how the apes of Wall Street bets turned GameStop and AMC into game changers. But I think that that's a full podcast, and like I said, I'd rather have an expert here for that one. So let's start with cryptocurrency. I know it's a buzzword, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard it already this year, but let's see where this information takes us. Before I go much further into this, I want to say that all of my crypto investments are under $1,000, okay? Except for a few of my older ones, which I got into a long time ago, and my one moonshot that is what little savings I have left. And by under $1,000 for these investments, I mean significantly under. Like the $50 to $250 range, okay? I am by no means a significant investor, but that's not because I haven't done the research or that I don't believe in them. It's solely a matter of available finances and trying to spread some bit of diversity around in my portfolio for this future financial deluge that we're going to come into. All right. I've still got to pay all of my bills, and I'm still trying to get Awakened Vapes and this podcast off the ground. So while I would love to invest more in emerging technologies and cryptocurrencies, if the circumstances change, I know that they're volatile and quickly changing technologies. So I just want to remind not just myself, but all of you to be careful. You shouldn't invest what you can't lose, and be very wary of brand new cryptocurrencies or tokens, as the number of scams going around are just multiplying exponentially since the Doge takeoff earlier this year. Enough of all that, though. Let's get into the future of cryptocurrency. The king of cryptocurrencies is the one that everyone has at least heard about by now, Bitcoin. Bitcoin is still the gold standard, and it's likely to always be the case. While it's not technically the first online currency, it is the originator of blockchain technology that all of the current cryptos have built themselves around. It has a finite supply and a solid number of individuals and corporations that are already supporters, especially if they can conquer the energy problem. As in, mining Bitcoin roughly takes the equivalent annual energy of small countries such as Malaysia or Sweden. That's about 0.55% of the total annual energy consumption. All right, you're saying, oh, it's not even 1%. What's the big deal? Well, if Bitcoin itself was taking 1/2 of 1%, what about the other 8.5 billion people and all the other systems and things that we're doing around the planet, right? That's a little worrisome. Bitcoin's price was around 17,000 last November, okay? That's 1 year ago today. It has swung past the $60,000 mark twice this year, and is hovering around 56 or 57,000 as I write this right now. Now, people are consolidating, people are a little worried about finances at the end of the year. People are also starting to take out money to buy Christmas gifts and holiday things, and all taxes are going to come up, and lots of things are going on. So while there is a slight downward trend since it peaked almost at 70,000, I expect the upward trend to be prevailing on this. And if Bitcoin is the gold, then Ethereum is quickly solidifying itself as the silver of crypto. What makes Ethereum different from Bitcoin? Well, the technology underlying Ethereum contains a ledger system, which allows for programs and contracts to be built on top of it. I wish I could explain these things a little bit more without sounding technical, but my knowledge on the math and programming of these cryptocurrencies is, well, a bit etheric. So maybe when I get an expert in here, we can dive deeper into those questions. For now, I'm just going to do the overview. As Ether was about $500 last November and has been trading between $4,000 and $5,000 this month, that's a 10-fold increase if you had invested last Thanksgiving. And that's not even an early investment. Litecoin has been holding its own lately and seems to be looking like one of the winners of the older cryptocurrencies. Maybe let's call it bronze. Litecoin is a lot like Bitcoin, however, it has a better transaction speed and produces a larger number of coins. It was trading around $75 last year and is maintaining over $200 per coin this year. In the big May crypto run-up, the one that was mostly powered by the next crypto we'll be talking about, Litecoin hit over $400 per coin. I mention that because the coin that I just teased, which is actually my largest holding and maybe my best shot at some financial freedom at some point, is the coin that everybody knows and loves, Doge. Dogecoin is actually built on that Litecoin tech, but it was created as a joke intended to mock the way people invested in cryptocurrencies they didn't understand. Well, guess what? People are still investing in cryptocurrencies that they don't understand and don't know how to use, or it's just total speculation. That said, because internet humor runs the world, Doge has really made a big run. Now, they used the popular Shiba Inu internet meme portraying that classic concerned Shiba face with text displaying its weirdly monosyllabic inner monologue. Much like its namesake, the coin used humor to eventually conquer the internet, starting at 0.026 cents. That means it would take 4 Dogecoins to equal 1 single penny, and then its value tripled overnight. As soon as it was released, it was, wow, this could be huge. People love jokes. And then 3 days later, it crashed 80%. During the first crypto bubble in the winter of 2017-2018, Doge briefly peaked at 1.7 cents. It was available all throughout 2019 for under 0.2 cents. That's 0.2 cents, as in it dropped 9-fold from its peak in that winter 2017-2018 and stayed for an entire year at over 100 times less than its value right now. I just had to do some math in my head, so forgive the little pause there. In 2020, which is when I invested, it ranged from 0.2 to 0.35 cents all the way through November of last year, and then it ended the year around half a cent. Okay, half a cent. Well, that's still significantly up from the 0.2 cents. It's only double, a little over double. So it was really in April of 2021 that things started taking off for Doge, with it hitting over 40 cents in mid-April. After coming back down to around 23 cents a little bit later, Elon Musk decided to promote it during his Saturday Night Live run on May 8th. The internet was going crazy. Elon's been a longtime supporter and internet meme fan, and as the show started on May 8th, Dogecoin was at 71 cents. When the show finished, an hour and a half later, Doge was already down to 47 cents. Since then, it's been a mostly downward consolidation trend as freshly minted millionaires, not me, by the way, I did not have that much invested, not even close, sold off their early investments to diversify their crypto portfolios and reward themselves for their early gambles. And in case you're wondering, I have never sold any of my Doge, only increased my quantity so far, as I do believe it has a lot of upside. Now, I originally bought in as a meme stock and as a joke as well. It's currently holding about 23 cents. But there are now over 1,900 merchants that accept Dogecoin as payment. And that includes Mark Cuban's Dallas Mavericks and some of his other projects. And while the founders stepped away from Dogecoin in 2015 amid concerns over too many unsavory characters adopting the coin, the lack of leadership didn't deter investors. In fact, in August of this year, it reformed the Dogecoin Foundation, which has some big players on the board and has set up a strategic roadmap for future development. They have capped the supply and made some technological improvements, and now it seems like the joke coin has some legitimate potential. Now, these 4 coins formed the backbone of my original crypto investments, but I wish I had had the time to continue my initial research and make some other investments earlier on. I had invested in Ripple back when you could still do so in the US, owning it before the $3 spike and taking a little profit to invest elsewhere. I had never had a whole lot of disposable income in my life, but even if I had started investing $25 here, $50 there, I would be a lot better off now than I am. So I hope that some of you can learn from my mistakes and remember, do your own research, but it's okay to take a chance and invest in your own future as well. After Dogecoin's soaring popularity, a new round of coins started popping up like fleas on a barn cat, all looking to suck the blood out of the crypto craze and dampen people's dreams of getting rich quick. Sadly, it's because these have all started to look a lot like Boiler Room or The Wolf of Wall Street, with their pump and dump schemes making a few people very, very wealthy while slowly fleecing a lot of individual investors and souring the entire crypto market. I think this is the point where I need to talk about my least favorite and most reluctant purchase to date, SHIB. Shiba Inu coin, or SHIB, used a lot of stunts to get recognition, and they really turned on the gas. The first and most obvious was trying to use the Dogecoin phenomenon to start their own coin, one that was created in August, by the way, just 3 months ago. They then gave 50% of the supply to Vitalik Buterin, one of the founders and creators of Ethereum. Vitalik is not a big fan of unsolicited coin gifts, but he did some good with it. Using the publicity, he donated $1 billion worth of SHIB to charity and burned the rest, lowering the total supply. However, that supply is still ridiculously inflated, and there should be no way for it to even be sustaining the 0.0043 cents. That's right, 0.0043. Yet, SHIB is actually technically worth more than Doge because of the sheer volume that they minted of this coin. I have no idea how this thing became popular other than people just fucking fearing that they're going to miss out on something that could make them rich. And I get it. I would love to get in early on something that could make me worry less about my own future too. But with only 137 merchants accepting SHIB and the supply being ludicrous, I cannot see it ever reaching even 1 penny. It topped out at 0.0088 cents. It almost hit 0.01 pennies. Okay, it would need to have 10 times and then some its maximum ridiculous price to even hit 1 cent each. Okay? Its ridiculous topping on October 28th of 0.088 cents, I think, is the highest it will probably be in the foreseeable future. That made this incredibly crazy meme coin worth $40 billion of market cap. And you can almost do nothing with it. Why? I have no idea. Thank you, meme culture. Maybe we should start looking into things a little bit deeper before trusting, investing what little finances most of us millennials have into a coin that you can do nothing with. All right. These last few coins are going to get into our project coins and such, coins with specific goals and purposes, things that I have very little investment in, but I wish I could do more. All right. I really need to get a crypto expert on here so they can explain things better. But until then, let's start with ADA Cardano. Now, this is one of my favorites, but let's be honest, I like most of these last ones a lot now that I've had time to do a little bit more research. I'm going to mention a couple of terms that I should get into more, but I'm going to suggest you do some research of your own if it doesn't make sense. So, as opposed to Bitcoin and Ethereum, which use proof of work to confirm their blockchain, Cardano is a proof of stake coin. The basic difference is that with proof of stake, a lot less energy is used, and it's also a lot more scalable. Now, I wish I could riff on that more freely, but again, I have limited ethereal knowledge of all of these cryptocurrency programmings. So while I can see it in my head, I can't describe it very well in words. And since I can't show you what's in my brain, we're just going to have to move on for right now. As for Cardano itself, it's a blockchain platform that aims to be a decentralized application platform with a multi-asset ledger for verifiable smart contracts. It's being built in 5 stages. The foundation, which is there, decentralization, which is mostly getting there. And then we're getting into the smart contracts, scaling, and finally their governance. Their Ouroboros consensus protocols and developments are informed by scholarly academic research, and they've teamed up with a personal favorite of mine, Wolfram Alpha, which you should look into that project as well. A little quick update on ADA Cardano. I just got an email yesterday that at least one of my trading platforms is removing Cardano. It seems to be a lot like the SEC case that got Ripple removed from things like Coinbase and such. I don't know exactly what it's all about, but it sounds like we've got another Ripple situation. So we'll see. If you have Cardano, I suggest holding on and hoping that the regulations come through in our favor. Now, next on my list is Solana. Solana bills itself as the fastest blockchain in the world and the fastest growing ecosystem in crypto, with over 400 projects spanning DeFi, NFTs, Web3, and more. Solana is a platform that aims to achieve high transaction speeds without sacrificing decentralization. It employs a bundle of novel approaches, including the proof of history mechanism. All in all, it seems like Solana has some promise as we get closer to the Metaverse. More on that buzzword later. And Web 3.0 integration. There's going to be a lot of room for a lot of growth in a lot of sectors. Assuming we can get them to all integrate eventually, they can all specialize in their own sectors, yet still work together on the Web 3.0 integration. Anyway, in no particular order except for my own research level, the next coin we have is Polkadot, which was started by one of Ethereum's co-founders. And while not all cryptos can survive in the end, and I think that really goes for a lot of those fad or meme coins, which are destined for dust, Polkadot actually allows blockchains to talk to one another. And this level of early integration may give Polkadot an edge to at least stay in the game through whatever inevitable culling will come during the next 5 years or so. Moving on, Kraken calls our next project Polygon, which was formerly known as the Matic Network, a scaling solution that aims to provide multiple tools to improve the speed and reduce the cost and complexities of transactions on blockchain networks. It's another of those projects working on speed and cost reduction so that crypto can be widely implemented. While this is just another that I think people should look into, it's one that I also think is likely to survive the coming culling. Now, don't worry, there are only a few left, and I'm just going to suggest you research 3 of them yourself. Those 3 are Chainlink, Loopring, and the sports-oriented Chiliz. That's Chiliz. I would love to go into more, but there's just so much randomness floating around there. Those are 3 of the projects that I'm kind of excited about. The last one that we're going to talk about, though, is actually my latest and probably my last investment that I'll be making for the foreseeable future. I decided to give it up and trust my gut, and I bought a very, very small amount of sand, which I think will give us the best way to bridge that gap between cryptocurrencies and the Metaverse, that new buzzword going around, especially since Facebook changed its name to Meta. The reason that Sandbox is any more linked to the Metaverse than any of the other cryptos, which are all technically linked because they're all trying to get to Web 3.0 blockchain integration issue so that we can game online. But the reason I think that Sandbox is more linked is that they're actually getting ready to release a functional Metaverse game on November 29th. That's only 4 days away. Now, before I get any deeper, for any of our listeners that are unfamiliar with the Metaverse, I think the easiest way to explain it is to think of the Oasis and Ready Player One. Now, if you haven't seen that movie, you must. It is essential watching at this point, though as usual, I do think the book is still a little bit better. The Ready Player 2 novel, well, that's a little bit of a touchy topic for me, but Ready Player 1 is still essential. All right. As for Sandbox, it's already partnered with over 165 people and companies such as Snoop Dogg, The Walking Dead, Deadmau5, Richie Houghton, The Smurfs, Care Bears, Atari, Zepeto, and CryptoKitties. They're poised to be an early success of the metaverse, and as of my writing, the cheapest piece of land you can pre-buy for their game is 2,677 sand. That's 2,677 sand. As their price just keeps going up as I have written these, at their current price, that 2,677 sand, which was $13,905 when I wrote it, is now $20,425, a nearly $7,000 increase in less than a day. So that's right. To own a piece of land in this game is now $20,000. You can buy lots of land in the real world for cheaper. I don't know about you, but that's worth significantly more than my car at this point. That's worth half a Tesla. If you had bought that land, priced at the same 2,677 sand, on October 25th, that's less than a month ago as I record this, and exactly a month ago as this is released, it would have cost you $2,000. That is a tenfold increase in a month. On June 21st, it would have cost you $481. $481. That is a 4,200% increase. More than 42-fold. Not a bad return for 5 months. I really wish that I had been able to find where to get some of these cryptos without having to go onto some of the other DeFi exchanges and do these things earlier. Because I was thinking and investing and talking about the Metaverse and Ready Player One while I was still inside prison. You can ask my old celly that I tried to get someone to start Coinbase before Coinbase. Oh well, it's only a couple of $1 billion, right? It's not like I missed out on much. Anyway, the problem is that they're still going to have to connect these platforms together, bridge these blockchains for easier transactions. We'll see how they fix that problem, but I see that it's going to be resolved with this much money being poured into it. And as adoption spreads even farther in the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to make all of the future millionaires and billionaires. It's just where commerce is heading. So I hope that people start doing some of their own research before it's too late, because my generation and younger, we can't get rich the way our parents did. So do some research, all right? From here, I could dive straight into NFTs and how early digital property could become the next Gen Z Pokemon card craze, or how what they're experimenting with is actually the foundations for digital contracts and the future of all business. But I think I should have an expert on for that. Any volunteers? Email me your qualifications and let's talk. All right, the last thing I want to cover on crypto is actually the possibility that I may attempt to start a token of my own one of these days here soon. One with a project aim that I hope has enough appeal to get off the ground, and that maybe some of you here on the podcast will support yourselves. I don't expect it to ever have billions in market cap, and I don't necessarily want it to. In fact, I think that could be problematic. But a few million? That could fund the A.R.C. indefinitely. What is the A.R.C. I've talked about? Well, if you've been a long-time listener, then you may have heard a little bit about it before. It's my idea for an intentional community. And it would most likely just start off as some acreage, maybe with a main dwelling, and the bare bones of what is going to become the Awakened brand's hemp and cannabis farm. This farm is one that I hope to build into a fully self-sustained farm at some point. Would likely be what funds most of the community for the rest of the future after it gets off the ground. It'll start as top quality cannabis flower, hemp and cannabis THC, but CBD and THC, but first starting off as hemp, especially if I do it in certain states where hemp is all you can grow. But here in Oregon, I would definitely be growing both. And then vertically growing that into a processing facility and possibly even a wholesaler as well. It's a vision I've had for some time now, and I've got some unique qualifications for it, not the least of which being my operations experience from within the Oregon cannabis industry, from one of the first wholesalers even. If I do go to this route, I will definitely let you all know here on the exchange and share that information with you. You'll be the first. As I think that covers the crypto portion of today's conversation, and this is actually ending up significantly longer than I expected it to for a quick update episode. Before I get into a few lighter topics, I want to touch on the Rittenhouse and Arbery trials coming to an end. The Rittenhouse trial was bound to disappoint people no matter how it ended, and protests did erupt, but it doesn't seem to be as bad as I had initially feared. I think that listening to some of the trial and hearing how the defense was able to at least partially show that Rittenhouse had feared for his life, he was only 17 after all, took some of the air out of those protests. And while I disagree that he should have had the right to have had the gun there at all, that was not a charge that the jury was allowed to consider in the end. And since our laws said that he was within his rights to have it, and he was fearful, there's only so much that could be done in that case. I don't know what else to say about that, to be honest. The other trial that I'm watching closely is that of the killers of Ahmaud Arbery. This trial, in my mind, has many more implications, as we have 3 white men chasing down a black man that was just running through the community. Take out the black and white here, okay? If someone chased any of you down while driving a truck and then jumped out of that truck with a shotgun, would you defend yourself? Would you run? Would you reach for the gun? Is it reasonable that maybe you tried to disarm them when you feared for your life? Was the chasers' unfounded fear that Ahmaud Arbery tried to grab at their gun justification enough to shoot him and kill him where he stood? Was running through their streets justification enough to run him down in your truck and attempt to kidnap him at gunpoint? I don't see how this is going to end well if there is an acquittal. And as I am recording this Wednesday morning, they are still in deliberations. The closing arguments have been made and the jury is out, so here we go. And one last quick update to this story. As I was in the middle of editing this actual section, Ahmaud Arbery's murderers have been found guilty. All 3 men are now facing life without the possibility of parole. Their sentencing is still to come. Now back to the rest of this episode. Before I wrap up what's going on with the rest of this year, I want to talk one last time about COVID and its trajectory. Is it affecting your holiday plans? We're back up over 90,000 cases per day over the last week, including 158,000 on November 22nd alone. People are going to do what they're going to do, vaccinated or not. And personally, I think that's about, unfortunately, what has to happen at this point if people aren't going to protect themselves and you can't force them to. I hope that those that are most vulnerable keep themselves safe and remember that it's only your decision that you can truly control. So you have to do your part to keep the vulnerable ones as safe as you can. As for myself, I've mostly been able to maintain quarantine conditions because I don't have a whole lot going on. Not to mention the fact that I got the jab myself long ago. So I do still plan on seeing my uncle and his adult kids for a little while tomorrow. As I've been less than fully employed these last few months, I've been visiting my uncle and helping him around his property. He recently turned 75 and is definitely one of those at-risk groups. He's been vaccinated, and I've been vaccinated, and I believe his kids have, although I'm not going to ask or pry. It will be nice to reconnect with them and have a little bit of an in-person holiday, as I did not do much of one last year. My parents and I spent last Thanksgiving outside freezing on their back porch, eventually giving my mom an ear infection and my dad a sore throat. So after visiting my uncle, I'm going to go pick up a Thanksgiving dinner and deliver one to my parents and one to podcast favorites Sean, Chris, and I to enjoy later that night. It's actually because of that freezing we did last year that my parents decided we should probably avoid the cold, and they decided to treat themselves and my podcast friends and I to a nice warm Thanksgiving meal. So let's add that to the list of things I'm thankful for this year, as well as still having a roof over my head and a warm place to sleep. Now, before I wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about the future of this podcast itself. I think it's likely that Awakened Exchanges is going to be appearing a bit more sporadically for a while. Think more episodes like this, update episodes, deep dive specials maybe like Agents of Chaos that we did, or maybe even just special occasions like Thanksgiving today. I'm looking forward to having some more episodes with special guests. It's just been hard timing lately. I have a feeling that things are going to smooth themselves out eventually, and we'll see where it goes. One last thought about future episodes, though. What do you all think about maybe an Awakened Exchanges investigation series? Maybe try to unravel a mystery ourselves, look into an internet group that is already doing so. Think something like Up and Vanished, or maybe even Serial. I don't know, it's just a thought. I'd like to hear what you all think, though, so please feel free to write me. Lastly, no matter how hard things can get personally, I always try to remember to be grateful for the things I do have in my life. With Thanksgiving being today as I drop this and tomorrow as I record, I want to share with you a few of the things I'm thankful to have in my life, on top of the warm Thanksgiving meal, roof over my head, and place to sleep that I just mentioned, of course. First and foremost, I'm incredibly thankful for the family I still have in my life. My parents, my uncles and aunts, even the ones I haven't gotten to see recently, and all of my remaining cousins. As far apart as we may be now, we were once equally as close, and we will always be a part of each other's lives and history. Then there's the family I've chosen to bring into my life, the few people that I can truly call friends in this real world. And I know that not all of you want to be mentioned on air, so I hope you know who you are. I do want to specifically mention Sean Shumway and Chris Mooney, both who have been guests on this show multiple times and have been like brothers to me. Thank you for being you. I also want Nicola to know that I'm very grateful to have her in my life. She's been in my life for almost 5 years now, through ups and downs, drawn to each other to help each other in this life, even through our mistakes, mostly mine. And of course, I also can't forget to mention Shadowcat. My little kitten will be a year old on December 9th, and she is turning into the sweetest and most playful little cat tween to be, and I really should post more of her on Instagram. But she is adorable, and if you do want to see her, you can find her at ShadowCat420 on Instagram. Also included in those I call friends are those of you I've met through this podcast or in other online adventures. Justin, who may join us here on the exchange soon. Paul from my Corrections Corner today. Taya, my favorite Kiwi. Cassie and Mark here in Oregon. And everyone else out there who's been involved in the exchange. All of you listeners that have reached out in some way that continue to listen and share this podcast with your friends. You really do make this world a brighter place. I also want to mention how grateful I am that this podcast is still on the air and still getting some downloads. Awakened Exchanges is over a year old now, and I hope that it continues to bring people to the discussion table for many years to come. I'm also very thankful that Awakened Vapes is still getting by. Hopefully the A.R.C will bring our awakened flower to the market, and that the vapes can thrive as one of our future vertically integrated product lines. And last but most definitely not least, I am also pretty grateful that I'm not in prison anymore and that there's still food in the cupboards. I think that about wraps it up, though. Once again, thank you, my podcast family. It's you members of the Exchange that keep this podcast alive. I hope to hear from each and every one of you, and that you each know you're important to me and to this world. Here's hoping for a good end to 2021 and an even brighter 2022 for each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and have yourself a wonderful holiday season. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you all enjoyed this update on the Exchange. I look forward to our next Exchange and to hearing from you all again soon. I want to give a special thanks to all of our listeners. You are the reason I make these podcasts and that I spread the word about cannabis in all forms, including our custom formulated Awakened Vapes. Please tell your friends about us, follow us on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, or wherever else you're listening, and please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you can. Every podcast says it because it really does help with visibility. You can also support us on Patreon or connect with us on the social media of your choice. We are at Awakened Exchanges on Facebook and Instagram, and at Awaken Exchanges on Twitter. Thanks again for listening to Awakened Exchanges, and have a blessed day.